Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us here in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. We continue our operation. It's day 293 of the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people, and now we will be talking about the situation on the border. Joining us in this studio is Andriy Demchenko, the spokesperson of the State Border Guard of Ukraine. Good afternoon. Let's start our conversation with the situation on the borders. What's going on the border with Belarus? This situation concerns all of us, and what's going on in other borders. Thank you. I will proceed with the border with Belarus, but first of all, I would like to mention that 293 days Ukraine heroically resists the invasion of Russian Federation in our country, and the units of the State Border Guard service heroically defend our land in all the areas where the full-scale warfare is going on, and they maintain their positions under the constant bombardment of the invaders. They inflict losses on the enemy units using mortar fire and the UAVs. Besides, we operate precisely with the portable air defense system, damaging enemy's aviation. Recently, the head of the Border Guard of Ukraine presented an award to the unit who downed the enemy's aircraft recently. The head of the Border Guard of Ukraine discussed the issues of the supplies of the units deployed in the front lines with the ammunition, weapons, and material and provisions. The head of the Border Guard of Ukraine was very expressful about the operations of the State Border Guard of Ukraine and the way our operations are organized and arranged. And besides, the State Border Guard of Ukraine ensures the security on the areas of the border where the situation remains tense. Specifically, I mean the border with Russia. The aggressor doesn't stop their terroristic actions. The occupied areas are still subject to the constant bombardments. The enemy uses howitzers and multiple launch rocket systems along with mortar fires with longer depth. The enemy uses more unmanned aerial vehicles, dropping bombs on the positions of Ukrainian defenders. Just like before, the majority of the bombardments are happening in Sumy regions and also Chernihiv region in the areas close to the border. In the month of November, we documented more than 230 bombardments. 4 times the area was bombarded by aviation, including the enemy's, and the enemy did not enter the airspace of Ukraine. And the Sumy and Chernihiv region were bombarded more than 270 times. As to the border with Belarus, there are no changes to the situation along the border. The situation is under control, and the units of the armed forces of Belarus, which were reinforcing the border with Ukraine, as if they observe certain threat from our side. Their configuration and number does not change. The nature of as well as nature of their actions, but at the same border, Belarus doesn't cease to support the armed aggression of Russia against Ukraine, providing their airspace and the situation is jeopardizing on the end of Belarus and Russian Federation, so-called joint state. They organize joint trainings, for example, and as it's known for today, the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Belarus made a statement about the inspection of the readiness of their units. There were no details, but the armed forces of Ukraine keep tracking the situation to see how dangerous is that to our country, how much of a hazard does it pose. We don't observe any concentration of the troops, which could pose hazard to our borders, but the inspection of their combat readiness demonstrates that Belarus keeps actively cooperating with Russia, acting according to their plot. I may add that all the units of the armed forces of Ukraine, including bodyguard of Ukraine and the units of the National Guard of Ukraine, are ready to any developments of the situation in the area. We reinforced our defense positions and we keep reinforcing them along the border. Ukrainian military mine the territory in the areas which pose most danger. Our units keep building fortification with the support of the local governments. We reinforce the video surveillance systems and use more unmanned aerial vehicles to control the situation along the border. Besides, the Ukrainian defense forces organize their teamwork and cooperation, and such measures are being taken not only in those areas where the units of the Russian Federation entered the territory of Ukraine on the 24th of February. It's happening all along the border with Belarus, from Volyn to Chernihiv regions, because we observe Russia actively press on Belarus, trying to get them involved in full-scale invasion in our country, get them involved in an open war. Still, Ukraine, for its safety and security, just like it did before and continues to do, it will continue to do, so that everybody who comes to us with the war gets proper response to their actions. As to the border with Moldova and the countries of European Union, the passenger flow is dynamic. The average flow of people is 75,000–80,000 people per day during weekdays, and it may reach 90,000 during weekends. So notwithstanding the massive missile strikes by Russia, we don't observe a significant increase or some drastic increase in the passenger flow exiting the country. And in the same way, there is no increase of vehicles going out of Ukraine. In November, we documented the decrease of the passenger flow 9% comparing to October, and it continues the dynamic of decrease that we keep observing during the autumn month. As I reported earlier, 5% in October, and 9% in October, and 5% in September. At all the checkpoints, generally starting from 24th of February and as of end of November, we documented the crossing of the border by around 26 million of people. Most of the people crossed the border with Poland, and more than 59% of all the passenger flow falls on that area. Comparing to the last year, the passenger flow increased almost twice, and 2.5 times increase is that we observe on the border with Slovakia, and 13% at the border of Slovakia. Also, I want to remind everybody about the rules of the border crossing so that people may get familiarized with them preliminary and studying the regulation number 57 of the government of Ukraine or at our information resources, because on a daily basis the border guard servicemen turn mostly men at the age of from 18 to 60 years who are restricted the exit from Ukraine during the martial law, save for the certain categories stipulated by the regulation number 57. Unfortunately, we don't see the decrease of the cases of violation of the state border beyond checkpoints. From the 28th of February, we detained more than 8,000 such violators, and more than 3,600 were detained at the checkpoints trying to leave Ukraine in a legal way, including using counterfeit documents. The most of such cases were documented in the border with Poland and Hungary. And to decrease the number of such violations, Border Guard of Ukraine, in cooperation with other law enforcement agencies, uses all necessary measures. And apart from that, the violators also should take into account the change of the weather conditions, which may be hazardous to their lives, because we have documented cases when people who tried to cross the border in an illegal way, specifically during winter month, well, such cases resulted in their deaths. Well, thank you for your attention. I'm ready to answer your question. Mr. Andriy, there is information that there is an electronic queue now working in the border with Poland. Yes, that's true. Yesterday, starting from 12 o'clock in the Yagotin checkpoint, the passage of the cargo trucks started under the procedure of EQ, Yecherga. That is applicable specifically to the exit from Ukraine. And we have to remember that at this checkpoint, Yagotin, we only have cargo trucks going out of Ukraine. As Ministry of Infrastructure reported, yesterday more than 1,100 vehicles were documented in the system. The registration was open one day 24 hours before, so the transportation companies from all around the country could submit the information and reach the border in a timely manner. And I want to also draw your attention that the project is being implemented with Ministry of Digital Transformation and the State Service of Roads, State Customs Service, State Border Guard Service, and Ministry of Infrastructure. There will be servicemen on duty at the checkpoints who will provide all the necessary information. The servicemen will be augmented by the special consulting teams, joint consulting teams, and this EQ procedure is called to lessens the time people spend in queue, so they clearly understand when and where they can easily cross the border. Now there is an observation of the way the vehicles are moving. The State Border Guard Service, we still have access to this database, and the State Border Guard personnel still make the marks in the passports of the crossing vehicles, so that we could further on analyze the information and inform the drivers when and where they can cross the border. Again, according to the reports of the Ministry of Infrastructure, the people can sign up, they can register at the Yecherga website, and there is a hotline where you can call and find out all the information you need. You can also submit your proposals to the operators of the EQ. Thank you, dear colleagues. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Marina Kožuhar, Ukrinform. Belarusian Telegram channels reported the move of the military convoy along the Ukrainian border. Do you have any details about that? How close did they get to the border? And the second question, now we observe the increase of information about the attempts of illegal crossing the border, specifically on the checkpoints with Moldova. Do you know which region is the leader where people try to cross the border, the men try to cross the border in an illegal way? Just like I already mentioned, the most of the attempts of the illegal crossing the border falls on the border with Romania and Moldova. But talking about the specific checkpoints, the leader is the checkpoints with Hungary and Poland. This situation is not changing. The people unfortunately choose the routes where they hope that they would be able to make it, and unfortunately they don't stop. Unfortunately, we don't see the operation of the criminal groups who try to make profit of it, and we reported on the identification of such groups, detection of such groups numerous times, and the organizers and the associate are subject to criminal liability. As to the first question, close to the border that you mentioned, we don't see any active operations, neither by the armed forces of Belarus, neither of nor of the Russian units. Obviously, the announcement of the inspection of the combat readiness of the Belarusian army is a challenge. We will keep tracking the situation, including how close such units may come, may approximate the borders with Ukraine. However, in the report by the Ministry of Defense of Belarus, it contained information about the engineering actions along the rivers. For what I know, those rivers flow in the depth of Belarus, so it doesn't change anything. We should not panic. We reported before that Belarus and Russia may be preparing to escalation of situation by deploying the regional armies of a joint state or inspecting their combat readiness. We just need to do everything we can to have our borderline, our border guard service to be ready to repel any attack of any units who try to enter our territories. Andriy, about the Marine Border Guard, what are the operations they're engaged in which parts and in what way? Well, I cannot disclose the details, but I mentioned before that all of our units, including our marine units, they act according to the general concept of the General Staff of Ukraine. They are on a combat duty. They keep tracking the situation in the sea areas, and they ensure security along the Danube River. I want to thank you for all the provided information. Thank you for joining us. I'm reminding you we had Andriy Demchenko, the spokesman of the State Border Guard of Ukraine, joining us. Thank you, dear colleagues. Right now, our team is working on the schedule for tomorrow, so bear with us and glory to Ukraine.